I've had enough, Marina. I have had enough. I thought they would be better. Tell me which bit of that doesn't resemble a Tory. Everybody who's listened to this pod knows what we wanted in the last election, which was to get the Tories out, and was so desperate for that outcome. Plus, I also absolutely believed that they would be a cut above, like very much better. And I think in one regard they are, because when you turn on the telly, you don't feel quite as much like throwing a brick at the screen, because you haven't got, absolute extraordinary odd characters speaking nonsense. You're not putting up with Truss and sort of, Suella Braverman and all the rest of it. Labour present a much more sort of sensible face. They don't speak utter bollocks, and they don't come across as completely deranged. But actually, if you look at what they're really doing, it's what they were doing. There's just
Jemma,
not enough difference.
Some of it,
Marina.
I get that, but let's just be really mindful that we are all being impacted by a media landscape that is hammering Labour every turn, and we're not hearing about the good stuff. Like, if you actually go in search of it, but you need to go in search of it, they're doing some good stuff as well. Think about it. Just off the top of your head, think about the ending of the doctor strikes, ending the train strikes, the big NHS funding boost, more GPs, more teachers, scrap Rwanda plan, got rid of the offshore wind ban. Like, there's lots of really good stuff, and there is a big long list, but we don't hear about it. It's not enough to latch on to.
If you dig a bit, there's also certain things that have got huge question marks for me. So let's get into some of them. Right, first of all, one of the things that they got in on within their manifesto was stopping all this non-dom nonsense, right? And they are now reneging on that. They are reneging on it. And it's just sappy. It's just weak. It's pathetic. And why? Because a tiny, tiny percentage of people might leave. And of course, they're very powerful. And they've lobbied Labour. And Labour have gone, okay then. And that makes me sick. So Danny effing Price, who's over on Instagram, is his biggest platform. And he's brilliant over there. Honestly, I really recommend a follow. He wrote, Labour spent the entire election campaign talking up this non-dom policy and how they'd spend the money, and now they've listened to their concerns and decided to go easy on them. WTF. If Labour continue to break its election manifesto promises, there'll be a one-term government. I think he's correct. And he has said Labour are under the impression people wanted a Labour government. Not the case. People lent their votes to get rid of a Tory government, so they need to start reading the room. He also wrote, and I think this is pertinent, I think it's mad how Rachel Reeves is referring to these tax-dodging millionaires as the non-dom community, as if there's some sort of discriminated against minority.
What are they going to do then? So because it was all fully costed,
They're
right?
watering
Their
it
plan
down,
was
really watering it down. Yeah,
wonderful.
great.
Right, wonderful. Why? Dale Vince, by the way, who is the environmentalist and well-known sort of millionaire, wrote 10,000 out of 3 million millionaires left the country last year. 10,000. That's a tiny 0.33% of the total. These people would rather leave than pay tax here. Good riddance, I say. Let's not change our approach to try and appease rich freeloaders. And that's exactly what we're doing. And then somebody called Chris Corney said, Britain didn't have any billionaires when our economy grew 3 to 4% per annum in post-war decades, with strong unions and industry, transport and energy nationalised. Now we have many billionaires, but an economy flatlining for 17 years. Maybe rich folk aren't what makes an economy strong, Rachel. It's just a pathetic backtrack. It's really weak. And it's like, did you not expect that they would make a bit of noise? Do you know? They've got a lot of clout. They've got a lot of wealth. Of course they can lobby. They can pay people to do that. So instead it just looks like they're going to go for the people who actually don't have the resources, don't have the voice.
Yes, because it gets worse, and I can feel your anger increasing along with mine. Let's very quickly, because we've got a lot to get through today, touch on the very worrying climate attitude from Labour as well. In The Independent, a source from the Sunday Times wrote or said that Keir was more interested, he was more interested in creating sustainable new jobs to replace jobs in old sectors that were being lost. He then said he wasn't interested in tree huggers, before adding to everyone's surprise, in fact, I hate tree huggers. And they're facing a backlash now from the left of the party over that decision to scale back plans for a £28 billion green prosperity plan. It's all false economy. That is the thing. Look at the world you need to be spending money on so you don't pay out more for the damage the climate will cause. Precisely. And why are you calling people who care about the climate tree huggers? It's so disparaging.
I know why he's doing that. So that is food for the gammons. That's what he's doing. He's basically being a pick-me bitch for the anti-net zero brigade. Like, that's what he's doing. He's like, see, there's a bit of meat for you.
Now tell me which bit of that doesn't resemble a Tory.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's millions of people, really sensible people. Zach, the 14-year-old at the top of this. Let's start talking to people like that. Who is talking to me at the moment, politically?
So now to Chancellor Rachel Reeves and her stance on benefit fraud. Here she is on Sky News talking to Trevor Phillips.
Working people will think that non-DOMs get sympathy and people on welfare get tough love.
This is about tackling fraud in the benefit system. And quite right too. If people aren't entitled to benefits, they shouldn't be getting them. And at the moment, we waste billions of pounds as a country every year in giving money to people who aren't entitled to it. And what we're saying is if you're ripping off the state and ripping off other taxpayers, we will take money directly out of your bank account and you risk losing your driving licence. So proper penalties for people who frankly, are getting money that they are not entitled to, and we'll crack down on that. By the end of the forecast period, we're going to be raising more than £4 billion a year by cracking down on fraud and error. For too long, this has gone unchecked. And I think most working people would say, absolutely spot on. I don't want to pay my tax to subsidise somebody who's not entitled to support.
Right. What is the difference there between her and Kemi Badenoch?
The tone's quite similar, isn't it, actually? But, OK, can I just say, I don't mind that policy, right? If you genuinely are a genuine benefit fraud, then absolutely you should have that money taken away from you. But what I hate about this policy is it's always punching down. Why do we never punch up where actually the gains are far bigger?
That's
like for example, all of the people who avoid tax. All of the people that siphon money from the government. Is like, like Michelle Mone, for example. In fact, there was a really good post. Someone called The Ghost of Mughals Past wrote, "Why can't you take money directly out of Michelle Mone's account? Why the double standards?"
Exactly. And again, she got in on telling us
COVID
and pledging,
corruption.
corruption.
Yeah.
Where are the consequences? Why is Michelle Mone still fannying about? Why isn't she behind bars? Why hasn't she paid anything? Where are the consequences? And I disagree, Marina. I don't want to hear about, the tone of that with the benefits when they are not looking upwards to get the actual amount of money that we need when we've got this huge, massive discrepancy in terms of poverty and wealth.
And it gets worse as well. So Francesca Martinez wrote, "Meanwhile, Labour are talking about making major cuts to the PIP benefit, which many disabled people rely on to survive, even though government data puts PIP fraud at 0.1%.
And that's when British billionaires' wealth has increased by £35 million per day last year in a study by Oxfam. Where does this end? I've had enough, Marina. I have had enough. I thought they would be better.